welcome to our very first Content Summit 2019, held at John Brown offices in Cape Town. Another round of applause, guys.
Hello. Well, not from around here. Is this just the thing to press to go to the next slide? If I press the red button, what happens? Okay. So first of all, thank you for that fulsome introduction. Really, the key thing to take out isn't, look at my TV. The key thing to take out is storytelling by any means, in any medium, and for any reason, is the thing that gets people handing over their money, but also hearts and minds. And if that works in a movie theatre, and if that works in a book and a self-standing brand, it also works when there's something else in it for them. What I wanted to do, there's a few slides that I want to show you, just some of the ways it can work. Some of them are adapted, as is the way of Dex globally, from a little thing that we did before, Michelle and I, in Finland. Now, that means that there may be some Finnish writing coming up. If that happens, and I don't notice, just shout, Finnish! And, well, no, don't do that, actually. Don't do that at all. So what we wanted to just do was take you through the idea that behind growth, and whether that's growth in budgets, whether that's growth in customer loyalty, and all sorts of lovely things, we're just going to use that shorthand word growth, there is love. So actually clicks might happen, and spend might happen, and I hope to God they happen, but it's going to be hearts and minds, and it's going to be a change in people's emotions. And actually, well, that'll change your emotions. It's we in the content marketing business, I think, could do really well, and we in the brand business could do really well to remember that for every outcome we want, there's something that happens to a real person, and there's something that happens to a lot of real people. And for us, maybe we're creating assets, and maybe we're telling stories, but for people out there who are taking our stories and reading them and looking at them and seeing the videos and so forth, that may well be the most important thing that they consume that day. It may well change their mind. It may well change their lives. And it might be that it's the most ridiculous little things that change their lives. So we always start by asking ourselves, really, really useful question, actually, more than it seems, what is content? Now, I went to a content conference, a marketing conference in Las Vegas not long ago, and I got chatting to one of the people there about content and what it is and how it informs the marketing mix. And he actually said, Matt, what do you reckon a content is? And I said, we haven't got any American people here today. And I said, well, what would you say? I mean, I've got my own views, but what would you say? And he said, well, what I see is it's like you get all the data. You get all this data, and then you blow that out everywhere, and that's your content. And I'm like, stop, man, stop. You have forgotten the bit in the middle that is the content. You're taking the thing that should inform the story, and then you're amplifying bullshit everywhere, but you've forgotten to actually do the bit that connects with people. So we did our own experiment to prove all of this. We do experiments at John Brown. We like to know how people are consuming messages, and we like to know not just like what Google Analytics tell you, so-and-so consumed it at 7 o'clock in the night, and then they stopped consuming it. None of that. It's important. The most important thing is probably the secret side of what people don't tell you, the intimate stuff, the stuff that makes them want to hear from you, stuff that makes them glad to hear from you. So we did a dual split kind of audience bit of research. We got a bunch of people who work on brand side, for brands, marketeers, agency people, people like us, people like you. And we said, look, if we ask the public, members of the public who aren't in on it, what content means to them, about the first kind of content that they see in the day and what it does to them, what do you think they'll say? And it was great, because all the marketing people and all the agency people said, well, yes, they'll probably say, like, Snapchat's big, so they'll say Snapchat. Somebody, like, video is obviously the future, so someone's going to say, well, I'm glad I saw some short videos in a meme format. None of that happened. Not one person spoke about a format. What they said, these are words harvested from the responses. So what they said is in the first 20 minutes of their day, they saw something beautiful. They saw something inspiring. They saw something scary or whatever. I mean, a couple of them were clearly better informed and said, oh, that's immersive. But people were feeling an emotion. People were feeling an emotion that was really important to them and that they carried with them that day and that was given to them by somebody they would never meet. More than that, in about half of those cases, it was given to them by a brand. So by somebody that they would never meet, and by somebody who had an interest that they would normally call kind of slightly frenemy-ish, if you have that word here, like being a frenemy, oh, you're only after me money, I know you are, but was given to them by a brand. We looked at what the media was, we asked them to send it. And it actually changed their day. And it often changed the way they felt about things. And to me, that's a hell of a responsibility. Do you know what I mean? It feels there's something very, very grave and very deep about it, that you can actually start to affect the way people view their world themselves. So actually, to that guy in Las Vegas, who clearly thought about content as, we're going to start a marketing channel. We're going to have a new website for our brand. And what will happen? What will be on that website? Oh, content will happen probably at some point. It'll just happen. We'll shovel stuff in. Messaging, right? Everyone loves messaging. We kind of talked to him a little bit more about the fact that it isn't just a synonym for stuff. That content, if you view it as a synonym for stuff, and if you go, yeah, we're just creating assets because those are the assets we're creating, and here's the production line, and actually someone's telling us keywords, and we're just going to repeat those keywords and put them out. You're just pumping out the data. You're pumping out your insight. What you're not doing is thinking, now how can I shape this to become a real story? Those things that light fires in people, those things that change hearts and minds. The things that your parents probably told you, probably with the same bank that your parents recommended to you way back when. Maybe not these days in switching. You often drive a car that your parents told you would be a car that you couldn't go wrong with. And it's those sorts of attitudes that we're right, absolutely, me too. Ford, bloody hell, I don't know what I got involved with on that. So we would say that content is communication that works in a way that goes beyond utility. It's the keywords, of course, it's the useful things that people need, but what's the spark? What's the bit that's going to make them need it and then go, oh, that was a moment of connection. I like this. Here's where I get more of it. I'll go back for that. I trust these people. Well, Avanish Kaushik said something really interesting. He's Google's digital marketing evangelist. And he said content is the thing that in itself adds value to the reader's life. I freaked out when I saw that because, hey, you're Google, you own YouTube. You said, reader? But yes, of course, reader. We know that in specialist areas where you're researching things and things like B2B, we know that typically the top 5 Google results will be for things over 2,500 words. The long read is back in a very big way. And we know that because there are all sorts of signals it sends regarding authority, regarding, well, actually, I'm going to not only know the thing, but I'm going to know why the thing, that all sorts of people like. But I thought that was quite interesting as well for the fact that the content is the thing that in itself adds the value, right? It doesn't just go golf sale. You know those people who stand in shopping malls with golf sale signs? It doesn't just go value over there, click here to get discount. It doesn't just do that. It in itself is the thing that is beautiful or that you remember. And it earns its place. Now, this is the only kind of thing, like why the hell should we listen to you? Well, those are some of the brands that we do it with. Some of them are you, actually. So I don't want to. But some of them you'll also recognise for being brands that lead. I mean, I don't know how many of you know that John Brown Media was kind of formed by Richard Branson's right-hand person at Virgin Atlantic when it formed. And they used to get... people used to, dear Richard, will you fund I've got an idea for a chocolate teapot, or I've got an idea for an upside-down air balloon, or whatever. Will you give me some money and we can do this? And Richard Branson and John Brown would sit there at the desk, opening them and occasionally guffawing, but often investing. And then one day somebody sent a photocopied fanzine, which is a kind of comic for grown-ups. It was very irreverent and quite funny. It was called Viz, and people of a certain age in Britain remember it quite well here, and elsewhere, and not of a certain age. And John thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen in his life. And he just stood up and he said to Richard, do you know what, bloody hell, look at this. I don't want to work for you anymore, actually. I want to be a publisher. I don't know what I'm saying, Richard. Richard said, great, very happy for you. But he's a sharp cookie. So he said, now, because you saw that while you were working for me, I get 25% of your business. And John went, okay. And then Richard said, but, hey, we've just launched this new airline, right? Should we have a personality? Should we be talking about it? Should we be telling people inspiring things? What should we do? So that was how actually John Brown, origin myth there, but that's how John Brown started. But since then, it's been all about giving that kind of personality juice to lots of people and lots of places. And sometimes not all brands, But sometimes it's about plugging in that kind of journalistic expertise that comes from that story-first approach. Now, the idea of take your market intelligence, but for goodness sake, add that overarching human intelligence. Take the thing you know. I mean, as Steve Jobs said, if I had given the people what the market intel told me the people wanted, we would all have slimmer mini disc players, and that would have been the end of it. But we know that if you're looking for something that's going to change the way you think, you need to surprise people. You need to give the people the thing that they didn't know they wanted, right? So I mentioned an example earlier about Bayer, one of our clients, large pharmaceutical company, wanted, we've helped them get to grips with pet health and how, yes, they can sell health things to people and to business, but people want to look after their pets. And they gave us all the intel, and the intel was quite specific direction. 95% of my job is probably helping clients to back away from the specifics. An example of this is they gave us the intel that said, you know, it was literally, here are a list of things, make sure the content is about these things, make sure these are the titles. One of them was canine irritable bowel syndrome, right? Now I've searched for a lot of things. I've got dogs. But you don't... Right. Right. I almost said that to the client. But the thing is, canine irritable bowel syndrome might be the answer, but it's not the question you need to ask. The question you need to ask, the thing that you need to talk about for people who love their animals is about pet mental health. The thing you need to talk about is not what that tells you. The thing you need to talk about is how to tell if you're, let's do a kind of stress thing for dogs. Let's do a stress thing for cats. Because I'll tell you what, when dogs are stressed, boom, that's the first thing that happens. And other symptoms that are more pleasant to talk about. But it's all about adding that editorial intelligence. That's what we call it. Guy that I sometimes work with, American journalist called Nick Schmeidel, he wrote the Bin Laden capture story that got turned into a movie. He said, we talked about journalism. He said great journalism, great storytelling, is taking something that people don't know about and really don't care about and suddenly making them care. Right? And it was like, that's a ballsy thing to say, right? But I was quite happy with that as a definition. And I walked home and I was thinking, yeah, because that really works when you've got a lone family's journey across the desert out of Syria or something like that. That massively works. And that example came to me because that's something that I'd seen, read, and then become involved with. And I cared so much that I suddenly started working on this initiative for them. However, it also works as a great, great definition of marketing. To take your new kettle or airline or financial product or whatever it's going to be that nobody really knows and nobody cares, and if they could, they can't differentiate it from anybody else's, and make them care. Quite a holy job. And of course, when we step away from those very, very exact briefs, not the thing that you say you want, but the thing that you should probably be thinking about, you actually talk about quite deep stories. And you talk about deep stories that aren't just for the client or for the customer, but for the brand as well. So, rather than, I would like to sell more kettles, the question that I think every brand needs to look sometimes is to step back a little bit and go, what's the problem? So rather than be a pharmacist, if you like, to treat your agency or your content creators a little bit more like family doctors. So instead of going, I've got a product problem, give me some tablets, here's a couple of rand, thank you, I'll be on my way. Maybe those problems are recurring, sir, madam. Why don't you sit down? Is your sales department not performing the way it used to? Whatever, you can see I've done that before. But the key is, maybe it's around these things. Maybe, and we know this, that selling more product, the enemy to being successful at it is the rising cost of acquisition, especially when you're in a commoditized customer scape. So what about the idea that getting people to trust and refer and love and become those, disrupt the thought that goes down in order to come to a price differential, to disrupt that at an early stage so that you become really the only answer to the question. I mean, Apple are really good at that. I'm going to take you through one case study and one minor case study, but there's a couple of ways into it. One of the things I just want to talk about for a second is the best editors. You see why I did this. So I'll talk about for a second the idea that authority doesn't necessarily just come from you being the brand that you are. So we know that domain authority is important, but authority, which is the kind of, obviously the gold standard, for what makes people trust and engage with your content will often come with that kind of journalistic authority. It's not just about here's the name of that person, we know them, we remember them, but it's actually about the passion that they can bring to something. A good example, a really good example, I know everyone thinks I'm a bit mad, Michelle, don't even look at me, is the orca whale. You remember the orca whale. Right, so orca whale. Demographically, I share nothing at all with an orca whale. I don't. I know. I've got short arms, but nothing at all with the orca whale. I don't live in the same district as the orca whale. I don't frequent the same brands. I'm not the same age, whatever. However, you get me, Attenborough, talking about an orca whale, and I share a common destiny with that bloody orca whale. Because Attenborough can breathe passion into a telephone directory, one. Two, I mean, it's true, right? I mean, the guy reeks gravitas all over the place. Two, knows his stuff to the point where if he tells me this orca whale does shop at the same mall as me, I'm going with it, right? Especially, increasingly so. But the other key thing, I think, is that he knows enough, and every great journalist should know enough about their stuff, and every great content creator should know enough about their stuff to go, the story isn't, here's an orca whale. The story is the shared thing between you and the orca whale. Is the orca whale having a hard time growing up because it just wants to protect its calf? You know what I mean? Is that orca whale suffering from the pressures of everyday life? Oh my God, I know how the orca feels. And suddenly, it's got me, right? And absolutely, this is an orca whale it's like Schrodinger's cat. I've chosen an absurd example to show you how close we are to every single person in this room does something that's closer to my realm of interest than the orca whale, right? Everything. And it should be quite easy, but it's only easy when you get passion, expertise, and empathy into the room together. And they are the stock in trade of great journalists and great editors. I want to there's three small examples. The only reason I've got this lady up on here is because she's our editor-in-chief from our Helsinki office. And there's a fashion retail brand called Stockman. And they are, if you like, in Finnish terms, they are the grande dame of fashion. So they are a department store. They are trusted. They've been around for a very long time, but they lack a certain nowness, right? So they're John Lewis in the UK is a little bit like the similar kind of example. There are examples in the US where it's the place where you know that your mum probably goes to get a trouser suit or your dad to get some new curtains. Can we change this? Yes, we can. So we recruited Jenny. She was editor-in-chief of the biggest and most successful magazine for young women in Finland, to the point that she did a TV show based on the letters that she was receiving, and people write to her. She's edited it for more than a decade, and people write to her now thanking her for the advice that they got in the letters column when they were 15, 16, 17. And it's become this absolute cult. So we're very lucky, but the thing is we knew we needed somebody who could talk to young women in a way possibly more convincingly than a jobbing editor like myself. Because we needed somebody who had lived, if you like, inside their heads and was that audience for a very long time. I'm not going to take you through this. We're a bit short time. What we created was, well, I'm going to call it a magazine, and it's going to look like it was a print piece, but that's only because I wanted to show you, it wasn't, it's omni-channel. I wanted to show you this lady. So we actually took what was expected to be a fashion title, and everybody thought it was going to be, here's a skirt, buy the skirt, look at the damn skirt, right? Or here's a young model in a skirt, look at the damn skirt, buy the damn skirt, here's the price. And we didn't do that. We deliberately turned it into, with Jenny's authority, something about being a woman. Something about being a woman in today's world. And to do with that, there is, in every issue, a conversation around something. And this one is a conversation around being bold. This is those of you who read Finnish. This lady is called Silla Sella, and she is the kind of Dame Judi Dench, the kind of, Sigourney Weaver, if you like, of Finland. She's very well known. She's an actress. And the thing is, she's made bold career choices. Her stock is high because she's always, when she's been given the easy way out, when she's been asked, do you want to do this? It's just a TV chat show. Or do you want to do a nude scene at the age of 80? She's gone, I'll do the art house thing, get me nude, or whatever she'll do. And the key is she is known for being a maverick. So we got her in, and we made her the front and guest editor of this piece around how styling it out can achieve anything in today's world. And it was great. So the boldness issue led through all sorts of things. It went in store. Of course, it was online. I'm showing you these because the photography kind of lives and breathes a little bit higher here. But this also became a cult. So we created a manifesto around it and a national campaign. I don't mean a national sales campaign. I mean we wanted to drive a national conversation in the Nordics around the idea of being bold and at any age. And it worked to the point where she ended up doing tours of TV studios and all the kind of morning breakfast things in Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, everywhere, where we would get typically around 12 minutes of exposure for Stockmann and its message in support of a certain way of living and a certain way of seeing the world. The odd thing about this is everybody then goes, oh, this is great. So you paid Sela Sela to do this because she's an actress, and you paid her, obviously, agent's fees, and you did all that, and you bought some stuff. Well, of course, sometimes we'd amplify something like that, and we work with the other Dentsu media organisations, especially to make sure our messages appear in the right place and that they're backed up with the right kind of the right funnel. But none of that was paid for. So all of that, including Sela Sela's participation, is because we are journalists and because we could sell her the idea that she could be part of this story and she could lead this change in Finland, and it was important to her. I just think it's really worth repeating. I know we do it here as well, but there's this thing where sometimes we'll say to a client, why don't we get, I had a conversation with Subway in the States. I said, why don't we get Lana Del Rey to do a thing for Subway? And they were like, we could never afford Lana. And I'm like, we don't. We ask her to do a story for us. And Lana Del Rey, it turns out, takes uni and journalist rates. So we're all pretty happy about this. And I mean, what a great lady. But anyway, I won't take you through too much of that, except to say that one of the key things for Stockmann was clearly this idea of kind of reimagining themselves at the heart of Finnish fashion culture and at the heart of women's lives in Finland. And they've achieved that to the point where their NPS is like double what it was a couple of years ago. And they're accessing more and younger customers. So once we've got them there are a couple of other examples of how content has been working online. The first one comes after we define conversion. Now, the idea of replacing replacing an old brand or a tired old brand with a fresher kind of look in hearts and minds, that's what Stockmann did. But actually, we know that what we want to do, and I said this at the top, is to get people clicking and to get people buying. So let's look at how we can bring cost per acquisition down through content marketing in a way that I'm going to take you through, especially the first brand I'm going to take you through. They knew they could not outspend their bigger competitors, right? So they knew however good their product was, there was no way they were going to achieve the share of voice or the penetration that their other competitors were going to get. Before I take you into it, I think one of the kind of hard lessons that we had to take this brand through, and they're called Starwood, they're part of the Marriott Group, is the idea that they could stop talking about them damn selves for a minute. And I know everybody knows that in this room. I know you're marketing collateral, so I know you do know that. But sometimes in the travel business, it's quite hard to get people to stop talking about, welcome, sir, madam, to our new hotel, where we give you finest luxury because you business traveller, etc., etc. It's really, really, really difficult to get them to stop banging on. So actually, we had to take them through a journey where they were able to say, well, what about what you want to hear about? We actually said to them, let's think about this as if it's a date. And when you're on a date, do you bang on about yourself? And if you do, will there be another date? That seemed to hit home. So I'm going to take you through acquisition and bringing people into the funnel, and then taking people through and to purchase. I say I'm going to take you through. That's easy for me to say. Can the clicker handle it? Yeah. So the first thing with Starwood was to take people who didn't know about the brand to knowing about the brand, to considering the brand, and considering them first. What we would like to happen for all of our clients is that they don't need to kind of jostle and hustle along with all of the other clients in their set. What we would like is that people, you know that feeling when someone goes, should I buy a Mac or a PC? And you just go, Mac, like that. Or do you do that? No. We do. But yeah, okay, so exactly. So that's a really, really good simulation. There is a certain audience, probably a lot of the time creators or journalists or whatever, or designers, who will always say that at a certain time. And then there are the kind of design fetishists who will prefer either. And they're all up for grabs, actually. And then how do you take them through to conversion? And I want to look just very briefly at what happens with conversion, because I don't really think that conversion is necessarily just, there you go, you've become a customer, boom, put your money in there and then go away and see you next time and we'll get you in the top again. It would be really nice if once they were around our house for our party, they stayed for a bit and then brought other people in. So, I've just said that, but there you go, it's a more beautiful picture. So, the Starwood brief was a brief for Asia Pacific, for Starwood hotels and resorts in the Asia Pacific region. They were doing okay. So I don't know if, do you know Starwood? Is it a brand you've heard of? Right, some do, some don't. It's not actually that much of a public-facing brand. So it is Sheraton. It is the brand that owns Luxury Collection, St. Regis, Westin hotels, but often people won't book with it through Starwood. Marriott now owns it as well. So they had been banging on for a while, just putting money into the kind of media slot, the digital performance slot, all kinds of slots. They've been trying to pull these levers, and they were kind of working. You know, they put 50 cents in and got 51 cents out, and it was doing okay. But big problem is that there's Hyatt, there's Hilton, there's all these better-known brands who were able to do that at scale much more and much more regularly, and we're just scooping it all up. The other thing, and I know, you know, some of you are in the financial services, some of you are in retail. In a commodified marketplace, you would ideally like to be outside of that whole kind of scramble for people's money, wouldn't you? You'd ideally like to be, you know, not like to the point where someone's going, which one's the cheapest? We'll buy that one, because that's just death for everybody in the sector. So they were caught up in that. And they came to us and said, well, we think the answer might be content, but we don't know why. And we think it might be a luxury travel blog. Is it? We actually said, no, don't you dare, because luxury travel blogs tend to get really boring really quickly. But we helped to define them. All they knew is they wanted more of that. More, oh yeah, we'd like blah, 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 something will happen and then business, please. You know, you ever seen the South Park episode where they have the underpant gnomes? Right. It's like phase 1, get underpants. Phase 3, profit. Phase 2, question mark. We just don't know. It was a little bit like that. And then they said, so we were able to say, look, let's define this for you. Let's define what we'd like is for your most valuable customers, we would like to be upstream, wouldn't we? We would love you to belong in their hearts and minds outside of any moment where they're going, hello, PA, could you please book me a hotel room? No, I don't care. We'd like you to be going, hello, could you see if there's a Starwood available? We'd love that. We'd love these people, these valuable customers, these repeat customers, probably business or leisure or pleasure, to engage deeper and to recommend people to people and to sort of start bringing people along and to refer people because we know they're power users. So we'd love to have that kind of preference. Would this be acceptable to you? We said. So actually, when I said 95% of my job is to get people to step back from the brief, that was the brief. So make us money. The brief, make us money through a luxury travel blog, and the test that they wanted agencies to do, and please don't do this, was they said, and the proof point will be that you will do an article which will be 25 reasons to go to Tokyo, please. And we're like, wow, first of all, you're being so specific. It's like you know the answer. If you knew the answer, and wow, you're already doing that, so why is that not working the way you want it to work? Maybe that's not the answer, so no, we won't do that, thanks. But no, nobody else said that. So I was quite glad that we said that. And then it was also, I suppose, how would anybody demonstrate that they were doing that differently? Right. If you said, we want you to do, and not just reasons to go to Tokyo, but 25 of them, please. Okay, what would you like the words to be? So actually, we were able to push back. The only way we could push back was by showing them a little bit of tough love. And I think tough love doesn't need to be confrontational, but this is Hilton. It's taken Hilton almost a century to get that big. And then just along came Airbnb, and it didn't have any inventory. And it got bigger, very quickly. So that's what happens if the hotel industry carries on doing what the hotel industry always does. So let's not do that, we were able to say to them. Then we talked to them about, well, and do you know part of the problem, Starwood and Marriott, part of the problem is people think you're just, I'm going to be a little bit informal here, people think you're just talking a load of wafty old cobblers a lot of the time. Because travel blogs, especially in the luxury sector, if I say luxury travel to you, do you know what the kind of tone of voice I'm talking about? You do, don't you? And it's like sleeping gas. It's like, the wonders of the gin-clear waters of the Mediterranean. And you know it's sort of a certain type of person, and they repeat this. And Tennyson used to write poetry, and T.S. Eliot hated it. Tennyson was dead by that point, so it didn't matter. But T.S. Eliot hated it, and he hated it because he said, there's a thing, you're falling victim, Tennyson, to a thing called the dissociation of sensibility, which is that you are creating romantic poetry in the Victorian era. The Romantic period was all about the belief that anything was possible. And that's why Romantic poets all went, oh, for a draft of this, and oh my God, what's going on over there? You live in the Victorian era. This is when we don't believe anything's possible, but we know that we've discovered everything there is to be discovered. They thought. It's a mystic. But you, mate, you're going on as if you were already still romantic. People hate it. It's phony. It's the uncanny valley, as they say in robotics and AI. It's the uncanny valley. Now, this is what hotel chains are doing. It's a lot of brands are doing. Car brands are really bad at this. Car brands don't connect with their customers because car brands talk to you, me, everybody else as if we were massively into what was going on under the bonnet of a car. We don't care. Most people buy a new car in order not to have to think about a new car. End of. And feel a bit cool. Unless they buy a Ford. I'm not bitter. But it's not that easy. We were able to show them part 2 of the tough love. There's a famous story in which Oliver Sacks, the famous neurologist, was trying to cure somebody who had no memory and thought that he was still 17 and he was in fact in his 70s. And he kept being asked who was president. He said, Roosevelt, sir, and all this kind of thing. And he eventually held up a mirror and said, does this look like the face of a 17-year-old boy? And the guy was absolutely horrified and went, oh my God. And Oliver Sacks immediately felt terrible. And then he realized the guy would forget this anyway within about 3 seconds, so it wasn't so bad. But we were able to show this is what hotels are doing now. Is this what you want? This is the sleeping gas. I would suggest the point at which we have free ebooks downloadable from pirate sites called How to Break into the Luxury Travel Market by a bloke nobody's ever heard of, with a drop shadow, is the point at which your discourse is bankrupt. There is nowhere to go on this. You can repeat the word luxury or secret as much as you like and nobody will believe you. Your words don't work anymore. Except if you're these guys. Really interesting. The 2 most powerful brands in travel right now in terms of shaping outcomes and getting people to go from content to purchase are these 2. This one was Starwood's #1 referrer to its booking pages on all sites. And they actually said to us, look, if you get this contract, just do what you can do, guys, knock yourselves out. But these are our #1s. So, I mean, these are going to get all our attention. I'll tell you a punchline to that in a minute. But they don't have anything except content, really. They don't have anything except content that people kind of trust. TripAdvisor a bit less so these days. But they don't have any inventory. They don't have anything. All they have is the stories that people are telling about the places that they've been. So can you get some of that juice? Standing out from the crowd. There you go. I'm glad that resolved. Otherwise, that would have been quite surreal. Data, we said, do not go writing your keywords, 25 things to do in Tokyo, as if that's the answer. That's not the content you need. It's not the content people want. It's going to put them off. It's going to be worse than nothing. I'll prove that in a second. So let us take your data and let us please give it to editors, to creators, to writers, to editors-in-chief who know this stuff, who have authority, who know not just about you, but know your customers' heads. And that might mean that they're not even in travel. I mean, one of the people we got to work with, spoiler alert, was Malcolm Gladwell. We got him writing some pieces for us because these people are business leaders, global travelers, educated. They're not just wanting to hear about your facilities. Smart amplification, we worked with iProspect and Visium and Isobar to create an amplification funnel. We figured if we put just really great content out there that made people care, remember Nick Schmeidel's maxim, make people care about things they don't care about, then perhaps we can see what they're caring about. Perhaps that can start to get us a little bit of insight into what they're really propense for. And then we can start doing what we want to do. We can retarget to them. We can actually call them if they're already preferred guests. We can start to really figure out how to bring them in. Here's an example. We actually fought back on the Tokyo piece. We said, look, we understand why you think 25 things to do in Tokyo is the right thing to do, because you know that remember this is APAC, your chief customer base is coming from these places, and those are the things they look at and do. Great. You've left it there though, haven't you, Starwood? You've just thought, like, let's put in one of these. But don't forget that bit there. This is the money shot as far as your customers are concerned. This is their deeper need. This is why they look for those things. And this says that if you tell them 25 top things to do, they will absolutely despise you. They will think that you are misunderstanding everything about them. They will go, you want me to do what everybody's doing? I am so sorry. There's been a great misunderstanding. Let us never speak again. And they do. And they certainly don't give you the budget. We know, however, that if you can show that you do understand them and that you're people like them, then they go with you. I don't need to play this. We created a couple of ads to start showing it internally to get internal buy-in. Everybody, probably if you're client side, you do know that getting internal buy-in is 75% of the way to getting a successful program, right? And probably the hardest bit. So what we created wasn't 25 things to do. Does anybody remember the big recession that there was in Tokyo 10 years ago? Right, okay, huge recession. Tokyo, corporate capital of the world, suddenly went bust, big asset bubble burst. And suddenly all the kids who were supposed to grow up and wear suits and ties, there were no jobs for them to do what their parents had done. And they became a generation of unemployed, eternal students, bohemians really, which was new. And it was new for Tokyo. There had never been a kind of 60s teenage revolution. So this became their 60s. Now, the other thing that happened was because all these companies had gone bust, there were loads of corporate headquarters and factories that were now lying empty. And it turned out that this generation of eternal students and bohemians all turned into artists. And they all went into these factories and started just, I don't know, what do artists do? Kind of painting them and sort of having a good time and just generally becoming really creative. So what we did was we got one of them, Chitose Abe, who is now the chief designer of Comme des Garçons, to take us through the bust and rebirth of Bohemian Tokyo from an economic point of view and an artistic one, so that our business consumers would enjoy the economist-style insight into this place and would absolutely feel that they are smarter about the place that they're going, but remembering that they shop for fashion, love museums, art, that they would also feel much more clued up about the hot names and about what they were buying when they were there, if they were to go there. Now, we created that. It got a lot of great feedback, of course it did, but it also became a retargeting opportunity. So we were able to track who had engaged, why they had engaged, in what platforms they had engaged, where they were from, and then we were able to say, for example, see the heart of Bohemian Tokyo, 4299, whatever it's going to be, with Starwood. Now, fair enough. It sounds that on its own created a lot of ROI, but the other thing it did was got a lot of headhunting done for the preferred guest scheme. So we know that when we got the feedback, out of everyone who read this, a good quarter had told friends about Starwood as a result of exposure to the content marketing and not as a result of exposure to anything else. However, you can't just create something and hope that people see it. So obviously we worked to make sure. For Starwood, they said, well, do you mean you want us to spend more money on amplification? It's like, okay, sure, you can start amplifying there. Absolutely. Amplify your content once it's done. Everybody in the world thinks that's what you do, right? We kind of said you're missing chances to amplify before it's done. So the drop date should occur when everybody's hot for it. The drop date should occur when your preferred guest users have got a chance to interview over Skype, to ask the chief designer of Comme des Garçons, we should have the people at Comme des Garçons feeding in, we should have fashion bloggers feeding in, we should have all of these people knowing that this is about to hit. Now, the punchline to that thing about TripAdvisor is within 6 months, this had overtaken TripAdvisor, which was great. 5-to-1 ROI was better. That's the thing. That's better. Good, better. Turned into 11-to-1 after year one. Best was the fact that at that point, Marriott bought Starwood. And you know what happens when a company buys a company? You know what happens to the people who have been working at the company that gets bought? Is that they're not there anymore. The assumption was that Marriott people were going to take over the marketing function. But this case study meant that all the Starwood people got to keep the marketing function. So the way we see it is if we can help our clients to do more, absolutely, with their customers, but to keep, to burnish themselves in a way, then that's a really good thing to do. Last thing before I hand over, I just wanted to take you through the bit where it's less easy because we're not just talking about brand and referral and high value purchases. So there's a brand, it's like a kind of slightly lower budget ASOS, I think, in the UK. Very also known as Shop Direct in parts of the country. It's, again, a highly commoditized market. They were under the impression that they could only sell more by selling cheaper, which is a real problem, right? Especially, well, you know this, when a trend is a trend, the whole get the look thing happens and suddenly everybody's creating that thing that was apparently yours and now everyone's got it and it's also costs only $15 where they've got it and you're into a kind of chase to the bottom. So we said to them, well, maybe you can help, maybe you can disrupt that. Maybe a bit of really high quality content around trends, showing an understanding of the deeper needs of your consumers. Very small story here, very small story. I know I'm running over. Am I? I always run over, so I thought I might be. Very small story. We do all our own research and insight into the minds and the deeper kind of what makes fashion consumers tick. And we do this because the fashion industry is very, very important to us, because a lot of our clients are in fashion retail. So we did a whole piece on the fashion buying habits of the millennial consumer and the Generation Z consumer. And there was some great stuff there about weekend 2 to 3 a.m. is a peak shopping time in urban areas. And we couldn't work out why it is. Of course, it's because people are waiting to collect their coats from clubs and they're going on their mobile. And I love it because I've been a little bit tipsy in the past and bought things and I forget about it and all these presents turn up for me. It's just, but the key thing, one of them is that we did a piece on the role of the impulse purchase. Because what we want is, we know that if you're a retailer and people buy only what they intended to buy, then nothing works very well. And you have to give people, you know, if you're in food retail, it has to be, we know that this is your shopping list. However, observe these delicious samosas. And a bottle of wine. Samosas, samosas was always the thing, my thing. That was always my absolute Jones for a good samosa. I need some sort of cognitive behavioural therapy to disrupt the samosa journey. But we did this piece about the role of impulse. Really interesting. We actually followed people around. This was around, because it was for John Lewis, it was the female fashion consumer, aged 25 to 35. And we followed these women around. And we interviewed them after they'd made various purchases. They spoke of their purchases on impulse in terms that anthropologists mostly reserve for discussion of magic, which was amazing. So they would say things like, well, I was on my way out of the store, it was a normal shopping day, and then the coat spoke to me. or the shoes, well, it was fate really, because I'm going out tonight, and there were these shoes, and it's as if fate brought us together. Or this thing just jumped out, and I didn't really have a choice. But what we did, right, absolutely. What we did, unlike that with samosas, but what we did realise is that those people who felt least like they had a choice, and in whom the impulse was strongest, had been exposed to content through more than one channel around not necessarily that item, but around a trend or an emotional trigger point. The emotional trigger point is very fascinating in fashion, but also in other things like finance and cars. The emotional trigger point is brilliant. In fashion, it's great because you've got the dual urge that are at war in all of us at all times, that when we buy a piece of fashion, we want to stand out, but also we want to fit in. And how you negotiate those things, I want to look a little bit special, but not so special that people go, Jesus, what have you done? You know, And actually, no, this. I'm bringing this right back home now to the case study, because one of the roles that we realised social media has for this brand, and that it plays for things like ASOS as well, is it allows you to premiere your look to your friends before you actually have to make the purchase and go, look what I bought, and people go. So you're actually able to go, oh my God, these shoes, and your friends can go, they are hot, or oh yeah, oh my God, no, and you can go, yeah, I didn't really want to buy them anyway. But part of what we did, so part of what we did for Very is we said, well, maybe we could start to do that. Maybe we could start to, sounds a bit evil, but maybe we could start to program people like that. Maybe we could start to give them the confidence that they need to buy into something. Because we know those deep emotional triggers, we know that everybody really wants to feel a little bit more confident about themselves, feel a little bit more like armed for what the future is going to throw at them. We know all of these things, so we can do that. Within Very, the retail space is very, very commodified, and it's very, very competitive, and there's a lot of emphasis on price and product. They were like, whoa, this is an e-commerce thing, man. What are you thinking about? We don't want to interrupt people. We just, look, there's a skirt. They'll buy the skirt, damn it. There's a price. Don't stop to read content. Just click and buy. And we're like, well, we don't think it's a case of stopping. We think it's a case of making people feel more ready and happier about the purchase, so that instead of basketeering, do you call it that here as well? Right, instead of basketeering, putting things in their basket and going, oh, I might do, I might not, and then forgetting about it, and then getting blacklisted, that they would actually go, I am confident as hell. This is absolutely. Do you not know? Everybody's wearing X. So actually we said we believe that with content in your e-commerce environment, we can increase average order value and we can increase frequency of visits. And we want you to monitor this more aggressively than you've ever monitored anything in your lives. Because the enemy of any content creator or any agency is people going, yeah, just, I don't want to over-measure this. Let's just see. We want people to measure the hell out of things. And if there isn't a way to measure it, we want to talk to you about ways that we can. Because it works. And this is just some of the collateral that we created. I've given you the backstory behind the collateral, I've given you why it's created, but this is some of the stuff that we created. And it all took people from social channels, from everywhere else, towards very.co.uk, towards product, but it kind of interrupted the product journey. It kind of brought people in and made people feel a little bit more easy about taking off their shoes and relaxing while they're on your website. About the fact that as a brand, you were not a frenemy, you were a friend. And about the fact that the product that you're giving them is not just going to be better for them. It's going to make sure that they feel more confident about stretching out from it as well. Buying more things, accessorizing. And it worked. I mean, that would have been quite a weird ending if I said, and it didn't work. But I've got to do that one day. It's going to be brilliant. Like those films where you think the hero's going to live, right? But actually the whole kind of orthodoxy of don't interrupt the fashion journey, just, again, like a date. Who's ever been on a date, first date, and someone go, oh, I bought you dinner, now marry me. It's not going to happen. Don't try and close the deal too quickly. Don't rush. So actually, make people feel more ready, make people feel easier about things, educate people into their trends, and they will not just buy the piece of clothing, they will buy the outfit. They will come back, they will give you their time. You will be the only brand who is doing it too. So actually, think about it. If they want to go, the shoes are good, but could I get them cheaper, and B, are they the right shoes? Then you're the only answer.